So, hello everyone, and welcome back to STW Sports. I'm host Samuel Wright, joined here by Birmingham City fan Joshua Clarke, and today we're going to go over the footballing weekend review, talk about all the big stories from the weekend, and we're first of all going to talk about the Premier League, starting with Friday night, a result which will probably delight Josh as a Birmingham fan. Arsenal 3, Aston Villa 1. Mikel Arteta's men, with a really good performance here, it's got to be said.
Yeah, they turned it on. I think they capitalised on Villa's kind of form that they're in now. They're missing that little bit of Jack, really. He kind of got them out of trouble, and I think they're trying to find their feet. And I think Mings is getting caught out a bit more than he probably was last season. Striking hard to play against him, and Arsenal were able to do what they do. Okay, they're not as back to their best yet. It's not going to make it perfect, but yeah, they're showing signs of becoming a bit of a unit. They know what their jobs and their roles are, and yeah, they played very well.
One quick player I want to ask you about at Aston Villa, though, is Jack Grealish's replacement, many people will say, is Leon Bailey. He's barely played, really, for Villa, which is quite surprising. And the one game he did come on against Everton, he was very good. Why do you think he's not playing as much? Because it really seems like he is a player they are missing at the moment.
I think that's a lot of the question that a lot of Villa fans are asking. I think there's not really an answer. I think it's a Dean Smith issue, without obviously knowing too much into it. It does seem like it's almost he's holding him back a little bit, and he almost wants to hold him back and then release him into a game and then be called a legend for doing it, when actually the lad needs minutes on the pitch to affect a game. So for my eyes looking in as a Blues fan, it probably isn't the best person to ask, but what I would assume is that Dean Smith is reluctant to use him because he could be the ace in his up his sleeve, but the longer he leaves it, the more pressure is going to be put on to play him.
Yes, we're going to move on to Saturday afternoon now. Chelsea 7, Norwich City 0. It's fair to say Norwich City really look like they're in big trouble right now. Obviously, lost Buendia in the summer, arguably their best player, but 2 points so far from 9 games. It's not looking good for Norwich. Can you see any way out of it for them at the moment?
No, I think they're gone. If they're not careful, they'll do worse than Derby, and they'll have the lowest points going. They've really got themselves to blame. They've not invested anywhere near enough to be challenging. There's players in the Championship that could easily have made the jump up to them. There's players that went to the Championship on deals that could have easily gone to Norwich, and on themselves, really. And I think the manager's probably took him as far as he can, but it almost feels like Norwich are happy to have him more than they see the plan isn't working with him. So I think the longer he's there and his tactics, the worse it's going to get for him, unfortunately.
And as for Chelsea under Thomas Tuchel, obviously Champions League winners last season and got their sights set on the Premier League. And despite Romelu Lukaku missing this game and not being in the best form in general for Chelsea, really, they're certainly not struggling to find goals. And you think they'll be right up there this season, Chelsea?
Yeah, I think if you look at the squad overall, probably got the most balanced squad in the league. I think now you probably miss a little bit of longevity within the squad, as in like the players knowing each other long enough to really push forward. If you look at that squad, it's unbelievable. They've got match winners across the board. So I think it's a case of, if it's not this season, it could be next for them, really. And yeah, they're very excited. I mean, if Lukaku's on it, they're a real force. So yeah, it's interesting to see how they can continue it going.
And Crystal Palace 1, Newcastle United 1 at Selhurst Park. Both strikers scoring in the game. Obviously, Newcastle had the big news recently, and not a bad point for them overall. But yeah, what do you make of this one?
I think it proves that they needed to get rid of Bruce. I think if any other club in any other situation, he wouldn't have even started the season. I think it's harsh on the Newcastle fans to blame them, saying that they hounded him out. I think he's a very poor manager. He's not Premiership level. And I think he's used a takeover as a reason to almost have his last little hurrah and last little dig at the media and the fans. And it's proven that Graham Jones sets them up very similarly, but they get a result. You know, a 1-1 draw against Palace and the way they're playing is a very good result for them. So I would like to think that Graham Jones can get them to a point where they can start a bit of momentum. But I think the quicker they get a new manager in with his own ideas, the better.
As for Palace, though, what do you make of the job Patrick Vieira has done so far? Have you been impressed with his fresh ideas compared to Roy Hodgson?
Yeah, I mean, I said this to a friend of mine. I couldn't care less about Palace before Vieira went. I thought they were a bit of a nothing team, a little bit like Burnley, predictable, very boring to watch, not really interested. But since he's come in, they've played more of an expansive game. They've got players that you actually want to watch. Gallagher's a cracking player. The centre half they got from Chelsea as well. He's a good player. He was good in the Championship last season for Swansea. So they seem like they're a team where they're interesting again. Before they never were. I mean, a couple of seasons back, they always used to go yo-yo up and down the league like Blues did. So, yeah, I think he's brought the excitement back to him a little bit. And a fair player. So I think Patrick Vieira is a cracking player. And actually, he's proven himself. He kind of knows what he's doing as a manager. So, yeah, I think they're quite interesting to watch now.
Another 1-1 draw came at Ellen Road between Leeds United and Wolverhampton Wanderers. It's fair to say Leeds haven't really started the season too well under Marcelo Bielsa, suffering maybe a little bit with second season syndrome, but they do also have a lot of injuries. As for Wolves, Hwang up front started very well, the ideal replacement for Raul Jimenez at the moment. What do you make of this one, and what do you make of these two teams so far this season?
I think they're carbon copy of each other. I think they've both got second season syndrome in a sense. I know Wolves have been in the league a little bit longer, but I think they both had poor windows. They should have not necessarily spent more, but been a bit more ambitious with the players to try to get in. I think Leeds have rested on the laurels a little bit, and they've not really pushed forward a little bit. I think Brentford are doing what Leeds did last season, and it's kind of showing up a little bit. And I think the Bielsa the way his mentality is, he expects. I think some of them have just come to the end of that cycle and they need to be moved on. A little bit like Klopp with some of his players probably come to the end. But Wijnaldum needed a new challenge. He'd done it all and it almost needed a little bit of the pressure needs to be off a little bit more to be able to relax into it and play the game of football, not to be fully on it all the time. And I think Bielsa at Leeds is doing that. I think he needs to shake up a little bit. And then with Wolves, changing the manager, they've kind of sidestepped. It's almost like he's like Nuno, but not Nuno per se. He's got elements of him. It's a little bit different, but he's starting to get a little bit of the feel of it. He got a cracking win against the Villa to come back from 2-0 down. And I think there are probably 2 or 3 players in the first 11 missing to make them where they can be. But they have got quality. And I think both the teams will be okay, but I think they'll both have seasons where they think they could have done better.
Yep. As for Goodison Park, one of probably the shock result of the weekend in a way. Everton 2, Watford 5. Obviously, Watford, Ranieri's first game was against Liverpool, which was a 5-0 defeat. This was the new manager bounce, you can say, a 5-2 win at Goodison Park. What a win for Watford this was, and who saw this coming?
Cracking. I mean, I love that Josh King got a hat-trick after being completely ignored at Everton. I think it's a brilliant story to have, and I think everyone's got a little bit of a fondness for Ranieri. His time at Chelsea, I think he was in the Prem. So, yeah, I think it shows that Watford can't be discounted yet. They've got some players that are really, if they're on their game, they're a very good team. They bossed the Championship last season, really. I thought it was a really good result. And I think it puts that pressure back on Benitez now. They clearly don't want him there. So he has to make sure that this can't become a regular thing where we lose a few on the bounce because the fans will turn. They're waiting for an excuse for him to go. So they don't want to be having a few losses back to back, especially at that sort of level. You know, I think knowing Benitez, he'll be more annoyed with the amount of goals conceded and the way they were conceded. So, yeah, I'd expect a reaction. If not, the fans are going to turn on him.
What about the two teams in general, though, Josh? Obviously, Everton, on paper, arguably got a worse team than last season. But to be fair to Benitez, until this result, really, and maybe the Villa one earlier in the season, he has done quite well otherwise. As for Watford, obviously, Xisco sacking many people saw as very harsh. Ranieri comes in, and this is a great result. But how do you expect both of these teams to fare this season?
I think Watford will be in the battle, and I think they might be able to sneak it out. I think they're better than Burnley. I think Burnley are going to be down there this season. And I think Everton will be all right. I think they'll be top half, maybe get a Europa League, maybe Europa Conference. But I think Benitez, if he wants to win the fans over, he needs to win a cup. So if I was Benitez, I would expect him to be prioritising the League Cup and the FA Cup. If he can do that, he will slowly get himself to become an Everton legend. It's been many, many years since he's got any sort of silverware. So I think he almost acknowledges that the league is almost unattainable, because he's not going to get anywhere near the top 4 and he's probably not in the top 6. But a cup run, he could definitely do. And the way he's picked up Damari Gray and Townsend, no one wanted them players in the summer. And both of them players have been the informed players. So I think he clearly knows what he's doing and he can make them hard to beat. You know, same old thing with Benitez, he's always compact. And if they can continue to do that, they could get themselves to a final. And I think that in itself will be massive for Everton.
Yep, and another 3 o'clock kickoff, a relegation battle, many people say, between Southampton and Burnley. Quite an entertaining 2-2 draw at St Mary's, but both teams really could have done without a draw, to be honest with you. A win would have been beneficial for both. What did you think of this one?
I think Southampton should have won, really. On paper, they're a better team. I have a real issue with Burnley. It's not necessarily the way they play. I just feel that they're sleepwalking through every season. It's always the same old. It's always a little bit. They're just there to be there, and they're happy just to win 7-8 games a season and just about stay up. And I think their time might be up. And I also feel sorry for Sean Dyche. I think he's kind of been cuckolded into position of this type of manager. But I think if he's actually given some money, he might actually try and do a little bit more. The players that he's had in the past, attacking wise, are good players, but I don't think he's ever been able to really build a team that is around an attacking mindset because he hasn't had the funds to go out and do it. So I think maybe their cycle being the Prem could be coming to the end. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to be down there at the end of the season.
As for Maxwel Cornet, they've got a couple of goals at the weekend. He's a very exciting player for Burnley and a very unlike Burnley player, many people would say. Yeah,
I think he's the same sort of like player when they bought Stephen Delfor. It's just a random one that they've come out of nowhere, but they need 2 or 3 of them type of players that are a little bit different to change their style to actually allow them to score more goals. It's becoming an issue for them. They don't score as many as they probably should, but then they don't create enough. So Chris Woods can't be relied on every season to be the one to score 10, 15 goals. They need to be getting it across the board and a little bit more. So, yeah, I think Sean Dyche's hands have been tied for far too long, really.
As for Southampton, though, Ralph Hasenhüttl, do you feel like, he is on borrowed time a little bit at the club? Obviously, since that 9-0 loss to Manchester United in January, their form's been pretty poor, to be honest with you. Adam Armstrong hasn't really worked out just yet, just the 1 goal so far. Do you feel like he's in a bit of trouble, Hasenhüttl, or do you think they're kind of stuck with him in a way because they can't really get anyone who's an upgrade, maybe?
Yeah, he's a little bit stuck, but then it's the club's fault that they are the biggest selling club in the league. They were Liverpool's, bit on the side for so many seasons. And as much as he has a part to play in the way he sets teams up, if his best striker goes to pretty much a rival in the Villa, like if Ings had gone to Man City, you can understand it. But to go to the Villa, that's literally you're strengthening someone you need to be in and around the mid-table fight. And they've lost it. And they've gone for Armstrong, where probably the safest bet. But it's also a bet that you can't guarantee on. He's got 20 goals plus a couple of seasons in the Championship, but that doesn't always equate to goals in the Prem. So I feel a bit hard done by for them, really, because they are a selling club. So if they get rid of him, they're going to bring a manager in that is going to have to accept the fact that their best players will go at the end of the season if they have a good season. So it's a little bit, their model works for them financially, but they're never going to get anywhere doing that. And they need to kind of hold on to their best players and grow.
Yep, moving now into the Saturday evening game. Brighton and Hove Albion 1, Manchester City 4. Phil Foden is some player, it's got to be said, and Man City completely blitzed Brighton here. A Brighton team as well have had a very good start to the season. Yeah, what a win for City.
Just comfortable. Just these sort of games that City don't really have to think about. As long as they turn up, and as long as they do what they're asked to, they'll breeze it. These are the games that probably in the past could have been a little bit of a red herring for them a little bit. I mean, back in the day, Chelsea used to struggle against teams like this, but this City team, there's too much quality within it that to let these sort of teams bother them, really. And Foden's just unbelievable. If they can keep Foden fit and they can keep him playing in a specific role throughout the season, England fans could really have a player that we can't be dropped. So for me as an England fan, yeah, I'm happy to see Foden being given the time on the pitch, really, by Guardiola.
Yep, as for Brighton and Hove Albion, they've been a good start to the season for them under Graham Potter. Do you feel like, how much do you rate Graham Potter as a manager?
I think he's cracking. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's a candidate for Newcastle, really. I think he's worked with a really small budget. They're not really blessed with loads of money. Being an ex-Blues player, I've seen him play in the 90s. Cracking player. I always liked him, hard-working. But I like the idea that he wants to mix the attacking side as well as the defensive side. Everyone talks about their stats last season. If it was for their goals, they've been fifth because their expected goals are massive. So I think, yeah, he's proving himself that he knows what he's doing. And I think he's close to getting a big job. It wouldn't surprise me if Newcastle come knocking. but it might be a little bit too soon in the sense of in the middle of the season. He might not want to move, but I think if Newcastle are genuine and they show the interest, I could see him definitely taking that job. And I think any manager now would be mad not to. But yeah, I do really like Graham Potter, and I think he's proven himself this season that he can definitely mix it higher up.
And as for the London derby, moving into Sunday's games now, West Ham United 1, Tottenham Hotspur 0. I had the pleasure of commentating on this game, and Harry Kane, it's got to be one of the worst performances I've ever seen from Kane. Is this a problem with keeping a player who clearly doesn't want to be at the club, Josh, do you think?
No, I think it's having a manager that doesn't know how to use him. I think the fact that Nuno's come in, he's not the manager that Spurs needed. Spurs needed someone to walk into that dressing room and players look at them and think, you know what, you can teach me something. They've gone from Mourinho to Nuno. Now, Nuno is a shadow of Mourinho. Similar style of play, but can't execute anywhere near as good as Mourinho can. Kane's clearly wanting to move. If it's City or whoever, he wants to be away from Tottenham. He's outgrown them. So the only way to have made that situation better was to give him a manager that could really excite him and push him. We all saw in that documentary, it was from Spurs last season, that Mourinho wanted him to be the best he can, and he wanted to be in the bracket of Messi and Ronaldo. He's not going to get that with a manager like Nuno. Nuno has no concept of how to get a player to that because he never had to do that. This is the biggest job he'll probably ever get now because he's done so poorly at it. So as much as it's Kane is an issue because he needs to make sure he does the right for his team, I also think the team is set up to help Kane. I think the team set up in such a poor and kind of a strange way, almost non-existent. And then when you've got the likes of Eric Dyer still starting for you at centre-half, you've always got a problem at the back, which then is the same problem that Kane had last season with Mourinho. They didn't have the defenders to help them keep it at the other end, so we can keep it in the other end. So it's a bit unfortunate. I think the quicker Levy acknowledges that Kane needs to move, the better for everyone, because it's ran its course now. I was a big believer that Kane should stay and he should be at his boyhood club and take them higher. It's clearly not going to happen now. It's ruining his career. It's ruining the relationship with him and Tottenham. And I think the quicker a deal is done to move into anywhere is the way to go. And then Tottenham need to rebuild, manager first, and then rebuild the squad.
Yeah, as for West Ham United, their pretty good start continues. Mikel Antonio continues his great record against Spurs as well. We've got to say, David Moyes deserves a lot of credit. He's doing a fine job there, not only in the Premier League, but also in Europe. Can't
believe it. Not the manager I ever thought he'd be turning to again. This is a Moyes that makes the Moyes Everton look basic. He's turned a West Ham team that was pretty much nailed on for relegation into a very capable, solid, and you can kind of rely on them to get a result now. Antonio's gone from being a winger to a fullback to a striker you can rely on. He's got to get all the plaudits, and I think last season he did win an award, and I think it was massively deserved. And I hate to admit that the board have backed him in the right way, and he deserves all the plaudits. And I think, in January, he could probably expect a bit more money to spend, and he's kept Declan Rice, which I was surprised about. I thought he would go to Chelsea or to United in the summer. So to keep Declan Rice at the club, they must believe in his mindset. To pick up players like Souček, it's amazing what he's done. And considering, the job he did at United to now, maybe it wasn't all him. It was the problem at United. Maybe there was problems at United that we all didn't foresee, and we all blame Moyes, when actually he's not actually that bad of a manager, and he's proven it now with West Ham. Yep, moving into the other Sunday 2:00 kickoff, Brentford have had a very good start to the season, but fell a little bit short on their own turf against Leicester City. A 2-1 win for the Foxes, and after quite a slow start for Leicester's standards, they're getting back to their best now under Brendan Rodgers. Yeah, I think it's just a little bit of a hangover from the FA Cup, from the Community Shield, and I think integrating a few more key players into the team and realising that probably certain players can't do what they did last season. Vardy, for example. But they've got some brilliant players in that team. Tielemans is unbelievable. Maddison, when he's on his form. And Daka is a player that you would like to think is the long-term replacement for Vardy. So, yeah, I can see them being up there. And Rodgers is a cracking manager. You can't deny that. So he'll definitely find a way to get them playing again. As for Brentford, though, very good start to the season for them. How much have they impressed you so far? Yeah, they've just continued on from last season. I was kind of expecting to do quite well. I always knew that Tony would be the man, but really he hasn't been the one that scored all the goals. He's kind of been involved, and it's been quite spread out with the three up front, really. So it's impressive that it's not all on his shoulders, which I always thought it would be. I think the team is very. They've spent money in the right ways. You know, the centre half in Kiev, who's come from Celtic, brilliant player, and doesn't always play. So they've bought the right amount. They've probably spent the right amount. Their issue is going to be this time next season. If they're still in the Prem, it's going to be what Leeds are doing now. This is where all the adrenaline keeps them going, and it's going to be. Are they going to do a little bit in January, then what they're going to do again in the summer? But at the moment, they've took the league ahead.
Oh, sorry, that's a little bit of a freeze there. But yeah, we will now move into the final game on Sunday. Manchester United 0, Liverpool 5. Only one place to begin here, really. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and this Manchester United team, a team who were tipped by many to do very well at the start of the season, maybe even win the league after re-signing Ronaldo. Now it's not looking good, and they were completely destroyed on their own turf by their biggest rival. Put this into perspective for us.
Ollie's got to go. He's not the man for the job. He was never really the man for the job. He was always interim, always short term, and he's setting teams up just to lose. And it's not really good enough for a lot of like United. Paul Scholes called it on the Champions League stream for BT. He called it point to point. And if Scholes, you can see it, the manager has to see it as well. You know, Scholes has had a little dip into management and he can see a clear issue. The fact that doesn't use him, it's an issue. Continuously playing Fred and McTominay when all the fans and any fan can see they don't work well. They're not. In the biggest game is an issue. And then Ronaldo being allowed to not press. Now, if that is then put somebody else up front, put Cavani who will do that. You can't put it on Age because Cavani's willing to press, so there's a clear issue and it all has. When it clicks, it works. Atlanta proved it, but they have to get into a position now where they have to fight for something to get a result. They need to just do it from the start. Soon as Klopp saw that team, he knew he was going to win the game. There was no issue, and the biggest thing I can take away from it, Liverpool didn't play amazing. They played well. They didn't have to. They probably was in third, fourth gear max, and even then they could tail it off a little bit. They didn't have to. You didn't see Henderson barking orders and demanding a step up. It was just right. Okay, we're going to win this game, and we're going to win this game comfortably. You've got Salah on the pitch. You need to make it as abundantly hard as possible. Luke Shaw and Maguire had the same sort of calamity they had against Spurs last season, and that's from two players that played quite well for England and built a relationship where England fans were saying they have to play together because they've figured it out. They've sorted it from United. It's come back again, and that's not anyone's fault other than Ollie's. If Ollie's not setting that up to make sure that doesn't happen, you have to blame Ollie. So it can only go so far, and I'm surprised he's still in the job. I thought he would have gone by now.
And another thing to touch on as well, Mohamed Salah, on current form, the best player in the world for you? Because he's certainly got to be right in the conversation.
If you base it just on pure stats, it's him and Lewandowski. They're the only two because they're the ones that are putting it out there. Messi and Ronaldo are always going to be in that bracket until they retire. I think for me, Messi cuts it because it's in a harder league and it's continuously breaking what's the word? Expectation more than anything. People didn't expect him to go and score 3 goals at Old Trafford. I heard a stat, he's actually scored more goals than Drogba now, and that wouldn't have been thought about 18 months ago. It was almost on the decline. Sell him now while you can. For me, Liverpool need to break their transfer, so their wage bracket, and pay him whatever he wants to keep him there, because selling him now, you will not replace him. He's unreplaceable. There's not a player in the world that can do it and you can guarantee the return. Mbappe, maybe, but Liverpool aren't going to pay that money to get him, so they need to make sure that their little Egyptian is staying put, and if they don't, they'll rue the day they let him go, because him leaving would be a bigger problem for them than it was for Suarez leaving. So I think, he needs to be kept. And if he gets a Ballon d'Or, which isn't out of the realms, Liverpool need to make sure that they pay him what he wants.
Yeah, I always ask Josh at the end as well. Your Premier League team and player of the week, please.
The team has to be Liverpool, and I think player, it has to be Salah, because he was just he glided around that stadium like it was his own back garden. So yeah, it's got to be Liverpool and it's got to be Salah.
Yep, just a couple of words on Championship football as well, Josh. First, your club, Birmingham City.
Yeah.
2-1 victory against Swansea City. After a great start for you guys, it's fair to say this win was much needed because you've been on a sticky run of form recently.
Yeah. The first half was poor. The first half was very bad. Swansea should have been ahead. Luckily, the team talk worked and we changed it up and we went a bit more attacking within the formation that we had. And then the first time, Chong put the ball into Deeney, one touch, bang, goal. That's what we needed. Hopefully, this can be the catalyst now to push on and to potentially get a little run going. I think it's clear that Deeney is up to speed and he's going to be our little ace in the pocket to get us far in the season. So, yeah, it's good to see the win. Good to see McGree get a run out and get his goal as well. And, yeah, I'm not confident for Saturday. I think it's going to be a very hard game against Borough, but I'm optimistic that we can put a performance in. I still think there's issues with this system that they're using. I think it needs to be a flat four. I don't think three at the back work. I don't think it's ever worked for us. We've never had the squad to play that correctly. So hopefully a little bit of tweaking it over the next few days can get that sorted. But yeah, I'm not expecting much out of Neil Warnock's Borough. But yeah, I think we can definitely breathe a little bit easier now. We've got a win. We've broken the rut. And hopefully we can start doing some more positive comments about the Blues, because it has been hard. And I don't necessarily blame Bowyer, but I do think he has to take a little bit of flack for this consistent use of three at the back when a lot of the time it hasn't worked.
Yeah, just a quick word as well on Cardiff City parting ways with Mick McCarthy. We spoke a lot on my Championship Unrestricted podcast about McCarthy when he first joined and said how great an appointment it was. It certainly started that way, but it really fizzled out quickly. And you got to say, the position Cardiff are in the table and the rotten run of form they're in right now, this was definitely coming.
Yeah, you can't lose 8 on the bounce and expect to keep a job. It's just not. It's not appropriate. It's not what any club wants or any fan wants. So yeah, it's not a shock. It's unfortunate for Mick. I think he was banking on potentially getting Harry Wilson back in this season, and that didn't happen. So when you lose a player like that, you're gonna be hard to replace it. So I think he's been unlucky, but then again, he's got to fall on his sword. I think he'd be the first to say about another manager, if they lost out in the bounce, you can't expect to keep your job. So it's one of them. And I think he probably knew before the game that if he didn't win, he's out. So it's interesting to see where Cardiff go next. I can't see Wilder going there. I think he'll want a bigger job than Cardiff. I could see probably Alex Neil going there. And then is that really much better than Mick McCarthy? I don't know. It's a bit of an awkward one. It's a bit of an awkward time of the year, really. There's not anyone that's standing out that I could see taking that job and actually doing a better job. But then again, Mick's lost 8 in a bounce. Anyone at the moment would be an improvement on that. So it's a hard one. But yeah, Cardiff is a good club to go to if the money's there. And I don't think it is.
Well, I never like to talk about managers getting sacked, but obviously McCarthy has gone after Preston North End's 2-0 defeat to local rivals Blackpool in the manner of it. Do you feel that Frankie McAvoy could be the next casualty?
Yeah. But then again, Preston, I've said they're going to struggle this season. Their best player, their biggest transfer in the summer is injured in Izzy Brown. So they're struggling. And a new manager probably won't fix what they need. They need to spend and probably bring a few more players in. That isn't going to happen until January. And even if it does, how much can they actually bring in? So it's a hard one. No one's really standing out. Everyone's going to be thinking Wilder jobs, but I think he's going to see his next job needs to be pretty much top end of the Championship, maybe even bottom of the Prem. So I don't expect someone to be jumping at big names at the Preston job or the Cardiff job, really.
Excellent. Well, that's all we've got time for, Josh, this evening. Anyway, on STW Sports, well, thank you very much for joining me. Hope you all enjoyed the show, and we'll see you all soon.
Cheers, mate.